Hello matriculants, let's prepare for the final exam November 2025 together. Today we'll be doing mathematics, so we'll be factorizing third degree polynomials, that is for calculus, cubic equations if you may call. So let's solve the following equation here. So the first thing to do to solve this equation is to identify the constant term in this equation, and the constant term in this equation is 40. So once you identify the constant term, you must therefore identify the factors of 40. So the factors of 40 would be plus 1, plus minus 2, plus minus 4, plus minus 5, plus minus 8, plus minus 10. These are some of the factors of 40. And then once we know these factors, we must therefore substitute each and every one of them into this equation until we get a solution for this equation. What do I mean by that? I mean, if I take 1 and substitute it here, if I get a value of 0, then it means that 1 is a solution to the equation. But if I do not get a value that is equal to 0, then 1 is not a solution to this equation. So let's try that out. So I'm going to first substitute here 1 squared minus 22, 1. And then I'm going to say plus 40. And then what am I getting? So I'm getting 18. And then 18 is not equals to 0. So therefore, this is not a solution. And then I'm going to substitute minus 1. So if I substitute minus 1 in this equation, and then I punch and press my calculator, I then get 60. And 60 is not equal to 0. So therefore, again, this negative 1 is not a solution to this equation. Then I'm going to substitute positive 2 just to see if it is a solution or not. So if I punch in my equation, I indeed get 0. So therefore, this simply tells us that x is equals to 2 is a solution to the equation. So once we know that this is a solution to the equation, we can then now write down a factor of the equation. So we're going to therefore say x minus 2 is equals to 0, and then we're going to say x minus 2 is a factor to our equation. Now that we know that it is a factor, we can therefore solve this cubic equation by simply separating it into two parts, one linear and the other one quadratic. So the linear part will start with this factor x minus 2, and then the quadratic part now, there is a way of getting the terms in the second bracket which forms the quadratic part of the equation. So in order to get the first term of the second bracket, what you simply do, you take this first term of the original equation, you divide it by the first term of the first bracket. So what do I mean by that? So what I mean by that, what you simply do, you say x cubed divided by x, and then you will get x squared. So this x cubed is the first term of this equation, and then x is the first term of the first bracket. And then that answer that you get here is your first term. And then the second term here is unknown, so we just simply say it's mx. And then what about the third term? So the third term, in order to get it, you take the constant term of your original equation, you divide it by the second term of the first bracket. So what do I mean by that? You say 40 divided by negative 2, and then you'll therefore get negative 20. And then once you have negative 20 there, you're going to substitute this is negative 20. So since now you have this equation, therefore here we can then multiply inside here to solve for m, which we do not know. So therefore I'm going to multiply x by x squared, which I therefore get x cubed, x multiplied by mx, which I get mx squared, which I say x multiplied by minus 20, then I get minus 20 x, and then I say minus 2 multiplied by x squared, I get minus 2x squared. I say minus 2 multiplied by mx, I get minus 2mx, and then I say minus 2 multiplied by minus 20, I will get a positive 40. All of this is equals to 0. And then now that we have this equation here, we therefore can be able to group like terms together. So like terms together, I mean the terms that have the same exponent. So I'm going to say x cubed plus mx squared minus 2x squared minus 20x minus 2mx plus 40 is equals to 0. So therefore, once I have done this, you can therefore compare this equation here with the original equation. So you can see the first term is x cubed, and then even here the first term is x cubed. The second term with an exponent of 2 is minus x squared, and then these terms here with an exponent of 2 it's mx squared minus 2x squared. Here minus 22x minus 20x minus 2mx plus 40 plus 40. So it is therefore okay to conclude that this term here is equal to that term in this equation, and this term here minus 22x is equal to this term here in this equation. So therefore, if I therefore equate this term to that term, I can be able to solve for m. So in order to solve for m, I'm going to say minus x squared is equal to mx squared minus 2x squared. So I'm simply equating this term and that term. So from there, I can therefore say this, the common term here is x squared. So I can divide by x squared throughout the equation, and then I'll cancel that. So this is going to be minus 1, this is going to be m, and this is going to be minus 2. So if I solve for m here, I'm going to say m equals to negative 1. If I transpose this to the other side, it's plus 2. So m is equals to minus 1 plus 2, which therefore gives us 1. So m in this instant is equals to 1. Then I'm going to go back to this equation here and substitute m. So if I substitute m in that equation, then we're going to have minus 2. It's given by x squared, and then we substitute m, it's going to be plus 1x, and then we're going to then have minus 20 is equal to 0. So we can now already see that our equation now has two parts. So this equation now has a linear and a quadratic part, and then now that we know the value of m, we can therefore solve for this equation here. So here we know here, we simply just seek two numbers. So the two numbers that we are seeking is the numbers that when we multiply, they'll give us a negative 20. When we add them, they'll give us a 1. And that is a 5 and a negative 4. So therefore, we're going to say x minus 2. And then here, we're going to say x plus 5. And then here, we're going to say x minus 4 is equals to 0. So we know that if we say 5 times negative 4, we get negative 20. If we say 5 minus 4, we get 1. So from this here, you can simply tell that, okay, we can therefore just simply say that x is equals to 2, or x is equals to minus 5, or x is equal to 4. So that is how we can solve our third degree polynomial or a cubic function in calculus using the factor theorem method. Stay tuned for the next video. Night.